Hey everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd. Welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design. You may not know it, but we help pay down our bar tab, let's be honest, my bar tab, with our Patreon account.
We do? What's that?
Well, Patreon's a service where listeners support podcast hosts like us. For a few bucks, they get extras not available to the general public.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. So where can our listeners find it?
Smack dab in the middle of our merch page, man.
Oh, well, that's convenient. So what do they get?
Yeah. Okay, glad you asked. You get additional recordings of stories and off-the-cuff conversations we have here in the bar. And just like a new craft beer on tap, I figured we could give all of our listeners a little free taste.
Oh, you're too kind. Okay. How about the time the TV show The Real World came to visit where I was working?
Oh, yeah. Reality TV? That should be a good reason for everyone to have a drink.
Yeah, you've been warned.
Oh, boy.
Enjoy.
I don't know what you want me to say. Or
I'm just telling you a story, and you're going to respond to the story.
You're going to tell me a story, and I'll react to it.
Yeah. So this is like true bar conversation, because I don't think I've ever told you this story.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's good. Yeah, this is one that I've never heard from you.
Yeah, the only one. Okay. So I'll weave a little bit of a tale here. So
all right.
Summer of 1994, I had an internship. I had a design internship. I won't get into details, but long story short, I wanted to work at Wired magazine, and they were only a year old at that point, and they really didn't have internships figured out. But there was this startup magazine in the same building, a couple floors below, and they directed me to this startup magazine, and like sight unseen, like I got a couple magazines FedEx to me in Ohio, and you know, this is in San Francisco, and I was like, yeah, sounds great, like they're printing magazines, it's legit, like let's go. And so I went out there. Long story incredibly short, it was a magazine called Might magazine, sort of the grandfather of a magazine still around today called McSweeney's, although they're completely different. Anyway,
was it like MIGHT or MITE?
MIGHT.
Oh, okay.
So back issues are available online. I have some squirreled away in storage somewhere. So the two guys who ran this magazine, they were the designers and editors, and they were named Dave Moody and Dave Eggers. So people who are kind of... The Daves. They were called the Daves. It was really funny. That's what everybody called them. And so they got this idea that the way that they were going to hype their magazine up, like get their magazine on the radar, was that they were going to get on The Real World because The Real World was filming in San Francisco. So, season 1 had been in New York. Season 2 was in San Francisco. So they're like, oh, yeah. So they were trying to figure out how they could do that. And they realized that one of the guys in the cast had been a cartoonist, an editorial cartoonist in college. This guy named I'm speaking from memory here. This guy named Judd. I think his name was Judd Winnick. Okay. And so one day, and I knew none of this. Like they had written a letter to MTV and to like pitch them on this stuff and whatever. And I think they kind of did this end run. MTV wouldn't give them the time of day, but they somehow found Judd and reached out to Judd, and they were like, "Hey, we got this magazine. We're always looking for contributors." That part was actually true because I don't think anybody was really getting paid anything. And so it was like, "Hey, we'd be willing to run some of your work, your cartoons in our magazine." So this was right around the time that I had entered the picture. I think I got the prior issue like FedEx to me as part of their package. This is like 3 or 4 issues into this magazine, and I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but like there's this cartoon, like okay, like the whole magazine was very sort of grab bag non sequitur.
Yeah, yeah.
There were some serious articles, and they were actually the first. That magazine was the first place I ever heard of Burning Man, because Burning Man at that time was like 4 or 5 years old, and it was very much a West Coast thing.
Yeah,
because they'd written.
So it's like a culture.
Yeah, and it was very like. It was national distribution, but it was very like West Coast focused, but had freelancers all over the country. Anyway, so this guy, so they're like, yeah, like he'll come, visit us or whatever because we're running his work and whatever. So I knew none of this. So like I'm sitting in there one day working, and all of a sudden there's this huge flurry of activity, and like a cameraman comes through the door, and a sound guy holding a big boom comes through the door, and there's like a producer or two coming through the door, and then the guy Judd's coming in, and this whole thing is this like very loosely organized cast, right? But I know none of this, so like I'm just at a desk working, and all of a sudden it's almost the office equivalent of like a cowboy kicking a saloon door open and just like bursting through, so like or like a clown car emptying out or something. So like all these people, the sudden flurry of activity happens, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like I'm just like doing layouts or whatever, like I don't know what's happening, and so suddenly the producer comes over and like shoves a release form on a clipboard in my face, and it's like, you have to sign this. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm signing. Like, what is this? I'm like, whatever, 21 at the time. So I was kind of like, yeah, like, all right. So I kind of signed this thing. And then I realized, I was like, oh, this is the real world. Like, I'm like, what, because like I'm looking at the form and it says what it's for or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because at the time I was in college, I didn't own a TV. I wasn't living in a house that had a TV. I was living in this like summer apartment in Berkeley, so we didn't have a TV. Like we weren't paying for cable or whatever. So the whole thing was crazy. So I loosely knew what was going on. So I decided that the way that it would be most advantageous for me was just to make sure that at all times I stood behind the cameraman. Like I didn't want to be in any B-roll. I don't want to be involved in the I'm minding my own business. I'm just sitting over here. But my bosses at the time, the Daves, like they were all about it, right? Because they're like, the plan worked, Yeah. And so Judd sits down and he has like his little portfolio of art, and they're doing this like total setup bit, this meeting where everything is like spread out, and they're like, oh yeah, we really like this, and blah blah blah.
Reality TV wasn't real.
I know. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. So anyway, so they go through this thing, and this lasts, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, maybe. I wasn't, keeping an eye on the clock. I was keeping an eye on the cameraman. So like they finally leave, like the whole like dog and pony show like leaves, including Judd, whatever. And I was like, what the fuck was that all about? Like I was like saying to these guys, like, well, what was happening here? And they're like, oh yeah, this is how we're gonna get some attention for this magazine or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like okay. And that was one of, I'll have to tell you some stories about. There were several colorful characters who came in. So anyway, 10-15 minutes later, Judd just by himself walks in, and he's like, oh guys, yeah, I'm so sorry about all that, but you know how it is, like they're following me around everywhere. And they're like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. And then so Judd ends up leaving, and they're like, they were I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll say this anyway. They were bagging on him. They were like,
really?
They were like, his work is trash. Like he hasn't done anything since college, and that was 3-4 years ago. The whole reason that we have him in was just to get publicity for our magazine, like whatever.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Poor Judd.
Yeah, I was like, damn. But I think Judd had bigger problems, if I remember. He had a crush. Didn't he have a crush on an Asian medical student on The Real World?
I don't remember, but it sounds like the Daves had some trouble.
Yeah. The Daves were not, as it turns out, true fans of Judd. So I don't know, like whatever. Anyway, that was my brush with The Real World. So,
oh man,
Dave, if you're listening to this, sorry I spilled the beans, but Dave Eggers talks a little bit about it. Oh, and he talks about it a little bit in his heartbreaking work of Staggering Genius book that's fairly well known. But so the epilogue and all this. So what actually got on TV? Like, this is all fine and good, right? Yeah. So I remember being back in college, and I remember hearing that, this was, because at the time, you sort of knew this was in production, but it's not like it was being like live broadcast or something.
Right.
So in the fall, this thing gets on MTV, and I remember waiting, like I'm kind of having to chew through all these episodes because I have no idea when in air quotes, my employer at the time was going to be on it. And so they were on it for maybe, like 10 seconds of one episode, and it was just a quick conversation and whatever. But I'm like, hey, like this guy I know is famous. He's on MTV. Like the whole thing was just so crazy. Like I don't know, man. I was just so I don't know. I'll use this word. I was just so sort of bashful and really focused.
Why didn't you want to be on camera? Like maybe you could have.
I didn't feel like I had anything to contribute. I don't know. Like I didn't know who the guy was. It wasn't my magazine. Like I was just the summer intern. I was also going upstairs and hanging out with the people from Wired a lot. Like that. I was kind of like, I'll go do that. Like that's more interesting to me.
Okay.
So I don't know. But anyway, so that's my story about my brush with the real world.
Oh man, we should do Where Are They Now and find out where Judd and the Daves are.
Well, I know where Dave Eggers is. He and I have sort of stayed in touch a little bit sporadically. The other Dave, I have no clue where he is. Judd, I don't know where he is either. There's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up with my story, and so I apologize to any and all people listening to it.
Well, Judd and other Dave, if you're listening, give us a jingle. Let us know how you're doing.
Well, you can fact check me and see if I'm right or if I'm wrong with my recollection of said events.
They're not going to remember a second of this.
No, they're not going to be like, who is Elliot? Yeah, what is his?
Who is this Elliot?
No, the two Daves will remember me because I was the very first intern the magazine had. So I'm sure they'll remember me.
Well, it evidently ended well.
Why? Because I lived? Like, what do you mean? Or because they got on TV for 10 seconds? Like, what's the all's well that ends well? Like, where? Yeah,
that was sarcasm because I don't know if how long did Mike publish after you left?
Oh, I was really the linchpin in the whole operation. No, it lasted. It's a great question. I have to go back and look. It lasted a few more years after that.
Okay.
They were like we had like legitimate advertisers. Like, Todd, here's two advertisers I think that are very of the time. Like, so this will date. You ready? So the first one I remember completely is Goldschlager.
Oh wow.
Remember when Goldschlager was brand new and it was like the models licking their lips and there was like the mustache of gold flakes?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was one. And then the other ad I remember was the Sony mini disc player.
Oh, yeah, very much of the time. Wow.
Yeah, so those are two ads. I'll have to dig up my old issues and go back through them, but those are two things that I vividly remember.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Very cool, man.
So, yeah, anticlimactic, but still about the real world. And I don't think you're ever going to find me on any sort of reality TV show. That was the closest I came to it, and I dodged the bullet.
you were like tangential to the real world, weren't you? You were the sort of real world.
My brush with fame.
Yeah.
I was sort of bummed that there wasn't like any sort of craft services situation. Like that would have gotten me more excited, I think.
That's right.